I'd like to call a meeting in order.
Yeah.
So over Christmas break.
Where do I give
Go
my
to that sounds
No,
lovely.
slide
to Buenos Aires.
We're live, everybody.
Oh, I see.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Thursday, October 13th, 2022 Finance Committee meeting for Council Rock School District. My name is Joe Hidalgo, and I'd like to start with roll call to my right, please.
Ed Salomon, School Board. Kevin Carpuck with Cornerstone Advisors Asset Management.
Ed Tate, School Board.
Mary Ann McKee, School Board.
Peter Piley, School Board.
Bob Dickey, School Board.
Director of Secondary Ed.
Nicole Crawford, Director of Elementary Ed.
Andy Sanko, Superintendent.
Michael Roosevelt, School Board.
And we have Doug Taylor from DeHoy Engineering, and I don't know if there's anybody online? No. Okay. So we're going to do things a little out of order today. We're going to put Kevin up first to do the Cornerstone update, but I'm going to leave it to Dr. Senko.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Hidalgo. We have four agenda items here this evening. As you said, we'll have Kevin go first, followed by Nicole Crawford, and then C&D will be Doug Taylor. Will be giving us an update this evening. Nicole?
I have a hard copy of initially.
Oh, that's good. I would like.
Thank you.
The disclosures are 5 pages, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So as the handouts are being passed around, I will tell you, the only clients we're seeing this quarter who've made any money this year are cash management clients. If you've looked at your personal investments, there's really been nowhere to hide. And that actually has been a benefit. The costs of that have been a benefit for us in the cash management world, but have caused pain for a lot of other folks in investments. And really, at the end of the day, what you're seeing right now is the Federal Reserve came into the year behind inflation, continues to raise short-term interest rates, but inflation, even this morning, posted an extremely high rate. So you can tell that the Federal Reserve is still behind the 8 ball. And that's good news for us, because every time you see the Fed raise rates, we're calling our the different managers and different depositories we have saying, well, the Fed went up, where are we going? And, for example, TD, who's our main depository, our biggest depository, I was on the phone with today and asked them to sharpen their pencil and come back sometime this month with what they can do and make sure we're getting as much income as we can. And this is really a different world. And if you go to the next page here, this is really a different world from where we were even at the beginning of this year. Where we were at the beginning of this year, where when you look at the 1 month at 12/31/2021, interest rates were virtually zero. They were paying 0.6%. The fact that TD was paying 50 meant we were getting above market. But now, as of the end of the month, end of September, that's up to 2.79. We expect that number in the next 2 or 3 months to be pushing 4.25%, potentially up to 5% as the Fed continues to raise rates. We are not bullish on the fact that inflation is going to come down meaningfully in the short term. But you look out and you see, you don't have, and again, it's the 1 month to 2 years. The 2 years are maximum allowable under policy, but you see those rates along the bottom line. We're now talking 4% for a 1 year, pushing 4.5%, 5%. And those are the types of opportunities we've historically used to take those late in the school year bullet payments, lock them in, and know we're going to get, a heightened amount of interest. So we're working through all of that now and trying to set the field for, given the fact that we're at the high of the cash for the year, we're kind of setting the field to say, how do we want to optimize this? We don't want to lock in too long because we think rates are gonna go up still, but we wanna make sure we drive income. And if you jump let's jump 3 pages ahead, so we don't have to talk about the future rates in painful detail, but this is an eye chart here. But you can see just in the first quarter of the fiscal year, the portfolio has made about 420,000 of income. That's actually more than we made in all of the prior fiscal year. And, it's a good setup for us to hit, we're gonna hit the budget number, we're probably gonna provide a surplus, because just the fact that last time we got together, which wasn't too long, the interest rate environment changed dramatically, right? We were talking about 2 or 3 more raises when we got together last time. Now we're talking about 4 or 5, and the fact that when we last got together, we assumed those 2 or 3 were gonna push us into a recession, and then the Fed would have to cut rates. Well, even if the Fed pushes us into a recession by raising rates, they're not giving up on inflation until they have it lit. And, I can sit here and crow about, making money on this end, but the truth of the matter is inflation's hitting you all on every dollar you spend for anything is now not buying as much. And when we look at the debt side, and I don't have the municipal yield curve, but borrowing money is a heck of a lot more expensive today than it was even 6 months ago. I do want to jump just quickly to page 9, and I think this is an important conversation because we had it early in our relationship here, but there are a lot of folks on the board who maybe we haven't updated. But when we own a 1 or 2 year bond, we do face mark to market. So as interest rates go up, the price of bonds goes down, right? So when you look at our holdings, if this wasn't a municipality, you would say, okay, you have unrealized losses, right? But the key here is if we hold these are all backed by the federal government. If we hold these to maturity, we're going to get face value back. And there's really no value to selling these at a loss and buying a new bond because the interest rates all kind of adjust. So we do have about $10 million that, it's at a lower interest rate right now, but that had actually helped us in prior years because, 0.25 and 0.5, unfortunately, were good rates, the past several years. But I didn't want anybody to look at any of these reports and say, we had a loss, because we're not going to sell them, we're going to hold them, and the return on these bonds, on this one the page before is a list of all the bonds, but on this page I happen to pick one that was a year out, right, just to make the math easy. And, this bond's going to return 4.2% for the district between now and a year from today. So would we prefer not having mark-to-market losses, obviously, but we're not concerned by that. If we want to have a discussion about whether the government's borrowing too much money and maybe we shouldn't be so certain that they'll pay us back in a year, that's a discussion, that's a joke, but that's a discussion for a different day, other than to say how that, the federal government spending money is making the Fed's job harder, which is also why we think those interest rate, increases are going to have to continue. So I know I gave the short version of that, but I'd be happy to field any questions or thoughts.
Any questions? I mean, I have a question if no one else does. I'll leave it to the floor first. So in this particular scenario, the 1 year, does it ever make sense to realize the loss and get the higher interest rate on the new issuing, or it's already baked into the loss?
It's already baked into the price. There could, on the flip side, there could be opportunities in the future if we think the market if we could sell it again, and we think the market's wrong on future interest rates, but we've never. Yeah.
Not on the rising environment.
Right. I mean, this bond, which is marked at 981,000, will, regardless of what rates do, will just kind of keep climbing to that 1,025,000 over the next year.
Okay, thanks. Then I also, You said the 420, back on slide 5, please, I'm sorry. Year-to-date, 420,000. But up there on the top, oh, I'm sorry, that one? Yeah, the I one. But up on the top, it's only for the quarter?
Yeah, I'm sorry, fiscal year to date.
Okay, fiscal year, okay. Yeah, that's what it says. And then the other thing, you're laddering these purchases.
Yeah, so though, and we are typically laddering them except for those bullet payments. And up until now, up until the last 6 months, we've really been leaning into the TD account, but you'll see, so, and again, it's an eye chart, but everything above the total general funds line, so you see M&T, you see TD, Stonecastle, and Pliget, you know, those all react at different speeds to the Fed moving rate. So we may not just ladder bonds, we are going to also move between those to get the best rate.
What's Pliget offering right now?
Pliget, I looked on the way in, it's at 2.9.
Okay, and rising, just,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, so Pliget will be, Pliget, because they own bonds inside the trust, will have a little bit of a delay, but, you know, it's a really competitive rate compared to maybe where they were last time rates started moving up.
So 3 months, we're doing pretty good first 3 months of the new fiscal year.
Yeah, when we're at the cash flow as well.
Yeah.
Right, now we have more dollars invested to draw more income. drive
Excellent.
more income.
Anybody else have any questions before we let Kevin go? Yes, Mr. Tate.
Thank you, Joe. So you can move money between these accounts, Kevin, at no cost?
Well, so there's no fee, but to take money from Wilmington, we would need to realize the loss. But we can add money, there are no transaction charges.
Transaction
Yep.
charges. Good, great.
Yep, and we coordinate that with the business office. So
Sure.
I can't wake up one
No,
morning and say,
I know.
let's move 50 million, you know,
Yeah.
but yeah, so, yeah, and we can optimize that pretty well. And everything except the Wilmington is daily liquid, so we can move it, and if we need it in a month, there's no mark to market, it's just that.
Great, great.
I have a question.
Yes, please, Ms. Pollard.
So we made money on the first quarter because of the treasuries, because the cash management is very profitable? Is that what it is?
Yeah, so if you own stocks or bonds, you didn't make money. But as the Fed, every time you hear they raise rates 25 or 50, we're getting paid more. And we're in a good spot. Like, we don't need them to raise rates to make money, but if they get to 5% and kind of just stay there, we're gonna, you know, I mean, on average, that would be about 5 million of income for the district, because we call it about 100 million is, we have the exact number, but I'm not good at doing 106 million of 5%, but yeah, so that, the past couple of years, it's been a nothing on the income statement, but it should, you know, 5 million isn't, or, you know, it isn't gonna change the future of the district, but it certainly gives you some flexibility.
So we must be happy. We have the inflation, the rates are going up.
Well, I'm not the one who has to figure out how to pay for new teachers or anything, so
Exactly, you have to put it into
yeah,
perspective.
I get to give you the good news and then get
Yes.
out of here. and-
There's two sides to
Of course.
every one. So that's the good side.
The
Anybody
other
else?
thing, well,
No, please.
no. This,
All right. Well, I think that's it. Thank you, Kevin, for coming out.
Kevin, thanks for being here. I'm going to put this whole report on our website tomorrow so our community can see it. All right, thank you.
Yep.
great idea.
Appreciate you making the trip down.
My pleasure. And because, I'll go see you.
Ah, there you go. Now you're talking about it.
Oh, good, yeah, she's good.
I like her.
And Next is Mr. Hidalgo.
Sure.
And board, next is Mrs. Crawford.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm happy to speak with you tonight. As a part of my role, I oversee federal programming for the district. And I would like to discuss tonight our need for 2 temporary English language development specialists due to a significant increase that we've had to our English language learners population who have registered since May of this past year. You'll see up on the slide that we actually completed this slide deck last Friday, and it does show the 283 total EL students we had in May of 2022. Then last Friday, we had 353 total EL students in our department. And then yesterday, we updated the slide deck yet again, and that had increased by 5. Even since yesterday, we are now at 358 total EL students in our department right now. That actually shows 70 new EL students since this number's increased, but 75 new EL students that we have that really show a surge since the end of last school year. As of today, like I said, we have a total of 358 total EL students, and 173 of those students are new to the program. So what that means is that they are likely just being entered into the program will depend.
You need to change your slide.
You got it. I got it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, no, I'm just speaking to the
Got it.
first slides. Just.
One back, that, thanks.
Sorry, I'll stop.
173 of those students are new to the program, which means that they'll end up being here for about 3 to 5 years before exiting on average. It's important to note too how we define immigrant students, which you'll see the percentages up on the slide, that in May 33% of our students were immigrants. October, 48% for immigrants, and then that is showing a 15% increase. And according to the PA Department of Education, an immigrant is defined as a student from outside of the country and resident in the U.S. for less than 3 years. Many have little or no English skills and are placed in regular classrooms and content area courses. So those students require, as you can imagine, a significant amount of support from our teachers. So with that 15% increase of immigrants, that actually equates to 171 total students that are actual immigrants. For this slide, I just want to talk a little bit about how these numbers, as I shared, are increasing daily. An additional 2 ELD specialists were hired at the end of last year to support the surge that you experienced or you heard about last year in the EL department. We're requesting consideration for 2 more ELD specialists to support this latest surge that I shared, where we're at 75 new students today since the end of last year. In addition, I just want to point out we're very connected, our department, to the local churches and community groups that are really mobilizing their efforts to find host families for these students that are incoming to our district. And so what we've learned from them is that they are finding a lot of multiple occupancy housing here in the district. They are finding homes to stay in until they can find permanent housing, but many of those families are remaining in Council Rock for the long term, is what we're finding. The totals that I shared with you a couple minutes ago also reflect the students that did graduate at the end of last year, did move out, did leave the program or exit the program. So it does reflect current numbers of students in our program right now. So again, these students are in need of significant academic and language development support, but I do want to highlight again their need for emotional and social support as well. They're coming into our country, many of them without having any prior experience to this area, and it's been a hard transition for many. So we are mobilizing and using many resources in our district, but our ELD department's working really hard to address the challenges that we're seeing with these students who are new to our area, new to the school, and need more than one may believe with just social, or with just language development. It's actually a lot further, deeper than that. The primary goal of the ELD department is for these learners to experience a successful and positive transition, to receive the proper support for their academic, cultural, social, and emotional development. We have started to check in with surrounding districts just to get a sense of how they're handling, if they're experiencing the same needs in their districts. And we have checked in with 3 most recently, and they are experiencing that same surge. Lots of students moving into their district, many that are in need of, again, quite a bit of support. And they're finding themselves in the similar situation as us, looking for more support and staff to help address these needs. It's really important to point out that we are going to continue to analyze what's working, how we're addressing needs, and if we do receive these 2 additional staff members, again, they're temporary, because what we're finding right now is that these numbers are changing every day. Just to punctuate again, yesterday we increased, just since yesterday, 5 more students entering the program. So I think that's really important that we as a district and department continue to analyze and monitor how these additional 2 staff members, if we do receive that additional support, if they're still needed at the end of this year. So hence why we're requesting 2 temporary ELD specialists. So that is the general information that I wanted to share, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Anybody? Ms. Marcel?
Thank you. So I think that when Ms. Polly and I, when we were going around during teacher appreciation, we were hearing, I think at Wrightstown Elementary, that that they had an increase in students kind of connected to what was going on in Ukraine. And I believe that we had a sense of, like, by school, which schools had a larger influx. And I just thought it was interesting to see, just that breakdown. And I don't need it for right now, but I think it might be interesting for us just to see which schools maybe might have more students. Just to think of an increase of 5 in such a short amount of time, it's just unbelievable. Do you guys see any trends in terms of some of the schools? I think I remember there were a number of Holland Elementary and Wrightstown.
Hillcrest too.
Hillcrest too, okay.
Yes. So there are pockets that we're seeing, but generally speaking, every school has definitely seen that increase in EL learners, over the last several months especially. We saw it last year for sure, especially last spring, but really since we've, the department folks that have been around for a very long time, principals, have never seen quite an increase like this. For obvious reasons, there's a lot going on in the world, and there are reasons why. There's a community here, wrapping their arms around these families, and I think they're finding this area a safe place to come to, is what I'm learning and what I'm hearing from the community.
And then just one more question. In terms of the request for 2, is that, are there other things that those schools need beyond that? Like, is just, and of course you don't have to tell us now if you want to think about that, but, just space-wise and just resources.
We're thinking outside the box as well. We're talking about different ways that we can deliver instruction. We're talking about different ways that we can provide a more consistent transition and welcome to the students so they're all receiving similar supports. And that's something that's been really, we have a very strong and collaborative EL department, but now that's really stepped up to another level where we're trying to find ways that we can best support these students, finding out what other schools are doing, and we're trying some new things as well. So I also don't want to send the message that the only answer is staffing. We're definitely finding different ways to meet the complex needs of these students for sure.
May I just jump in on that, Mrs. Marcel? So we will get you a by-school breakdown because we've also looked at the breakdown of just enrollment by school. but we'll break it out by EL students. The second thing is, some of the things that you've offered, thank you for that, if we need other things, but right now, we know we need some licensing for programming and those type of things. We've been able to do that within the confines of the budget that we have. And so, as Nicole said, that department, we're all working hard to make sure the kids have what they need as they come to us.
So I got a couple of questions.
Mhm.
So, Simon, how'd you come up with two? So we've seen an increase over last year. My kids are staying in their schools respectively. How do we come up with two? And then walk me through how two additional people are going to make any difference and how they would work the job. I'm not being sarcastic, but two to me for 70 kids, that seems like a huge caseload. When my daughter told me today, she's got a kid in her school, so several, they don't speak any English, you know, and just, which is fascinating for the kids because they're trying to figure each other out. It's another great part of being in school, but two to me seems like a lot. I mean, it doesn't seem like enough, or is it? And then obviously, the elephant in the room is that no one's paying for this. We're inviting people into our country, and we're talking about school and funding very recently in the paper. And this is going to be on the heels of taxpayers, as Council Rock. So I want to make sure we do this in a very large sort of way that we look at this, because it is transient to some degree, you mentioned. How do we judge if two's enough? Do we need three? Is it not enough? I mean, so walk me through what two is going to do. Or can we, or can you?
We started by looking at the actual caseloads. We have one ELD specialist, Mrs. Hubeck, who has a very good handle on caseload. She does a lot of support with the team. We sat down with her. We looked at the caseloads. For the specialist, we looked at the number of students in each building. And we also looked at, the trends, what we've seen in terms of typically how many students last year ended up graduating, leaving, and looking at the math in that way. We're starting with two, temporary, because we also need to monitor this closely. We also didn't want to ask for more than we may need at this point. Start with two, we'll analyze it, see if it's working. We definitely, with beginning of the year screening data, have a sense of where we think the greatest needs are, but if this surge continues to happen, we may revisit that. But it's a starting point. We certainly want to be sure
So this is
that we're
going
not
to be a
asking.
breathing ask.
I'm sorry?
This is almost going to be a breathing ask as we live through this.
It's a fluid situation. The 5-student increase from yesterday is a great example. I mean,
Yeah.
we can't even update the slide deck
That's
quick
fine.
enough.
So my other question, sorry, Joe, my other question is going to be, how are we doing this? How are these kids getting put into the school, knowing some of our enrollment issues, specifically right down to Holland? If you say you have a brother-sister team coming, third or fourth grade, for instance, you can fit one kid in third or fourth, you can't do. Have we had that situation?
So anytime we enroll and we have a classroom that's capped, and somebody has to go to a sister school, we give the option to the parent. So if there are multiple children in the family, if there's a first grader and a second grader and the second grade classroom is capped at Holland Elementary, we offer the family the choice. Do they want to split the students or keep them together? I don't have any hard data on that, but by and large, parents typically want to keep their kids together. And so we're able to accommodate them. Those students will go to the sister school for 1 year. They'll be included in our enrollment data for the upcoming year with the June 1st deadline of enrollment.
So this is really, really affecting enrollment in terms of trying, as we start to learn about Richboro, when we talk about Wrightstown, this is going to be, kind of a question.
It is fluid, as Nicole said, and the example she gave you of 5 kids from yesterday until today. Last week, we saw 5 students in the EL program leave and go somewhere else because they got permanent housing outside of our community. So as Nicole said, we've benchmarked with other districts. We know others are going through the same thing and looking at ways to, put resources in place for these kids that are coming to us.
And my last question, if I could, is there a tree of long-term substitutes for ELD?
That's to be determined. We are going to, if we're able to get these 2 additional ELD specialist, then we'll have to look at the candidacy pool. If there is not a strong pool of candidates, we'll work with Christine Taylor and see what our options are for hiring. We just don't know at this point yet. We wanted to wait and see.
That's to me a long-term concern. If we're starting to see increases and we can't get a handle on it, too, I think it's kind of short-sighted, which is okay. But where are you going to find 3 more? And if everybody's having the issue, you can work a little magic yourself and go back and teach English.
Well, it's really a double-edged sword,
Yeah.
right? Because it's fluid, we're asking for something temporary. But because it's temporary, we're not going to be able to draw somebody out of a contracted position from another district. And so until we can get a handle on hard numbers and come to the board and ask for something permanent like we did at the end of last year, asking for 2 permanent teachers coming into this year, we're going to have to just do what we can to put people in place to support the
The nice
students.
thing, and I'm sorry, the nice thing is, we've done well with keeping our long-term results and making them employees of the district. So we've done that very well over the years. So please keep us updated on this because this is, financial to the district and something we need to think about moving forward.
I'm going to work my way around the
Okay.
table. Mr.
No, I just-
Okay.
Thank you, because it's kind of related to what Mr. Salmon said, and maybe it's a better question for HR, but this is a very specific area of instruction and certification, and if surrounding districts are seeing the same need, how available are ELD specialists? I mean, is this like trying to find a Latin teacher or a physics teacher?
Not quite, I don't know that, the secondary level, I would say not quite typically, but the last we hired was just several weeks ago for another position, and there were candidates. So I don't know if it would be that difficult, but again, things are changing and districts are experiencing the same needs. But we will work with Christine Taylor closely should it come to that and find out a path forward for sure.
Thank you.
Anybody else moving this way? Oh, Mr. Tate, well, you were being a gentleman.
I
Mr.
deferred to
Tate.
her, but.
You were a gentleman.
That means you're
It
at
was
the end.
funny, something that Ms. Crawford said at the beginning dovetailed with what Mr. Solomon said about nobody helping us in terms of funding. You said you were in charge of federal programs, and I was hoping you were going to say that there was federal money coming to help hire EL teachers.
We wish.
Okay, that's my answer then. No. Okay.
Maybe there's a grant somewhere. Let's put it out there. Next. Who wants to go?
I have a couple.
Go ahead.
How large right now is our staff of,
So right now, our total number of ELT specialists, we have 8.4. And that's comprised of both 1.0 and then some that are partial, so full-time and part-time.
so then they go from
They're split.
school to school? And then I guess my other question is, how do you determine when someone leaves the program? Not leaving the district, but
Exits.
exits the program? How do you determine that?
Like
And what is-
testing and such.
So they just test out?
I don't know, it's a testing process and I'm still learning myself, but you do have to demonstrate that you no longer are in need of that support, so there is a process for that.
And generally takes 3 to 5 years?
That is on average from the time someone starts in the program, received without, prior language to exiting. That's just an average, just to give a sense that some of our EL learners are there with us in the program for quite a few years. It's not just a one-year turnaround. Just painting a picture.
Students do test annually, and that's how they exit the program, when they satisfactorily pass that test. And then, if you look at the research on how long it takes someone to master the language, that's where Nicole and Shannon will pull numbers like 3 to 5 years.
Thanks.
Mr. Roosevelt.
Bob had one of mine, but connected to that, I think that I was just doing the math here of 353, if 70 equaled to, trying to figure out how many we had math is 5, so I think to Mr. Salmon's point, we've got at 8.4, we're kind of projecting a bit more to what, like 42 kids per person, and so that we've got a little bit of room, but not much. I wanted to know if you have any data of the changes year to year for the previous couple of years. If we added 70 this year, how many did we add last year, the year before, et cetera, to help understand the trend of how temporary this is? I'm guessing that it's going up. So it's not like next year we're going to have less of an issue here where we can say goodbye to 1 or 2 of these temporary individuals. Do you have that data for what it's been?
From the last couple of years, just to go back to the 2021 and 2022 year, we gained 61 students, which was the original ask for the 2 ELD specialists, and then now again, we're up to 75 new since that time at the end of last year. So, and we can provide some additional data going back several years, but it is definitely increased since things that were, been happening in the world last year, even at the school level, at the building level at Goodnow, many students coming from Ukraine and that pocket of the world. That's where we're seeing many, but not all. So there are different pockets that are starting to arrive too.
And the definition of up to 3 years, that could quite literally mean a week, right?
Up to 3 years.
The definition of an immigrant is somebody that's new to the country within 3 years. So that could be, they could be here for a week, theoretically, right? Okay. I don't imagine that there's any offsets. We know that people are probably the most expensive thing and what we value significantly in this district. I don't imagine that there's any offsets for this, but understanding the trend would help us understand budget for future years. So that data would be helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's good. I would like to ask a question. Oh, you didn't ask a question?
No.
Go ahead.
Forgive me.
Go ahead.
So when we visited the schools with Ms. Marcel, especially at Wrightstown, they were telling us of kids that just came into the country, like days, and they did not speak any English, and that our teachers were helping them way beyond the English language, because they had no idea what they were doing. So do we have any structure or help for situations like that? I mean, because it's not only learning English, it's learning everything. They have no idea how the country works, how the school system works. A lot of them are traumatized. What can we do to help in situations like that beyond the English instruction?
So a lot of that support is coming from the ELD specialists for sure, but they're collaborating very closely with the homeroom teachers as well and providing them with resources to be able to support the students in their classrooms. When I referenced earlier that we're having different conversations, and I brought up the word traumatized. That word trauma has come up because there are students in our district that are experiencing trauma coming, right into our district and not having any notice and starting a whole new life. So we are also talking to counselors. How can we serve those students in that way? So certainly meeting them where they are, but expanding where we can the resources available in our schools.
And do we have enough resources for that right now? I mean, I don't know.
So if I could even go back a little bit further, before the kids walk into the school, they have to register right here in this building. So in our registration department, Liz Schroer, it's become common for Liz to work with people in our district that are bilingual, and we use those folks that are internal as translators so we can appropriately register the students before they go to the school. We have worked again with a handful or more of our own internal people that speak multiple languages to help us with that transitioning, because we have seen more than we've seen before, students that don't speak English. And so there's some of the resources we're using, our own people internally.
But it's looking different now than it has in past years, for sure.
And I have to say, my impression was that the teachers were amazing. They were trying to find even other teachers within the school that spoke like a different language, or they try to pull people from like other places, and they were really very caring and they were going beyond their like line of duty.
And the EL department is very, very strong. They're continuing to find ways to work and, provide the right resources to those homeroom teachers, that when they're not in there supporting or pulling the students, that they have the right resources to be able to teach and juggle all of it. And that's something that's certainly a work in progress. But we're looking at different resources, different approaches than we have in the past. And so we've had some really productive discussions even this week, just about some different ways that we can support these students. So,
Great, thank you.
I would just add that trauma that you speak of is real. I heard a story from a middle school principal. Of course, we do our fire drills at the beginning of each academic year, and a student from war-torn Ukraine, and the bells, a reminder of bomb sirens and things of that nature. Things that we just can't relate to, that these kids are struggling with daily. Pretty difficult.
Yeah, I bet.
All right.
and the ELD specialists, just to add on in terms of exiting the program, they're a big part of that. It's testing, but also the feedback from the ELD specialists and inventories and such. So there is a process involved with that.
And if I could,
Just, Mr. Hidalgo, if I just can
yeah,
add
go ahead,
one more thing.
please.
We've sat around the table and many times and spoken about special education, gifted education, and there are caseload maximums that are put on us under school code. This EL program, there are no caseload requirements. So when we say 75 kids, it's up to us. Do we want to put one teacher to try to cover 75 kids? And we're somewhere balancing that out based on the number of students and the intensity of need. So it's not like we have guidelines to follow like we would if we were talking about children that fall under Chapter 14 or Chapter 16.
Okay, perfect.
And that's kind of why I guess
You want to
two was
put the water
enough,
bottle up before
Right.
it leaks. It's-
I'm going
because you don't know what you're getting into with the caseload, dealing with this.
Things can
environment.
change in 2 weeks. We
Yeah.
could be looking at completely different numbers. So we would appreciate the open conversation
Yeah.
about this topic for that reason.
which segues into what I was going to ask. Before I get to that part, I wanted to understand the program a little bit more. I understand we have one FTE that's the specialist, I believe, and then a lot more part-timers. I'd like to know what the head count would be. So when you're asking for 2 staff members, are you asking for 2 more FTE or just 2 more part-time people?
To full-time, we think our chances of, at this point, being able to acquire full-time people, even though they're temporary, which I agree can be harder to acquire, but 2 full-time is probably going to be the best way that we can get and hire
Right.
teachers at this point. But the conversation has come up, there are part-time ELD specialists that would like to be made whole at one point. So that's important to put out there too, and that's been a part of our discussions, that they may be at .8 and want to have the .2 and go
Well,
from there.
yeah.
But those are conversations yet to be
I
had.
would like the breakdown of each person, what their FTE is, because we have 14 schools, right? And I know that they must be shuffling around and doing a good job. And again, you might be able to get more FTE by increasing those. That's why I wanted to just know that, so we understand the program better and how much time people are putting in. And then also, I'm just looking at this, thinking we have a great community here, a very affluent community, and for members of the community to bring in immigrants and support the world, the world family is pretty cool. And this is money where we should be spending whatever we can do to help people in need when they come. And going back to your slide from October, we had 48% were immigrants. That's over 170 people coming in at the beginning of October, and now only 15% of the next 75, roughly, are immigrants. So it's interesting. I think we would have a good idea if we could understand the dynamics a little bit more without getting personal and identifying people. It'd be understood. I mean, I do believe it is transient in nature and it's temporary, but to understand where we are with the situations. It helps actually you guys help them more, but also for us from overseeing the program to kind of anticipate what's going on. And to your case, if they come back tomorrow and they need more, we're going to do whatever we have to for kids that don't speak English, and I believe most of them will. Not all of them are going to settle here for very long. They do have lives in other places too. I'm happy to do this. It's not a bad problem to happen when you're helping people because it always comes around. But I would like to understand, that was my first question, where is this coming from? And it's not all the same. So it'd be interesting to know some vague data at some point. Mr. Solomon, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Yeah.
I just had one quick question I just thought of because you were talking a lot about how other districts are seeing this as well. Is there anything that you've talked to Dr. Hoffman about at the IU in terms of trying to coordinate, whether it's resources or best practices, or I don't know what that would be, but I just was curious to see if you've heard anything from him or...
I did not reach out to him on this. As Nicole said, we've benchmarked with some other districts to see what they're doing. And we know that there's an influx, but we have not looked, and I've not talked to Mark about anything countywide.
Just some clarification, you said we currently have 8.4?
Mhm.
So this would put us at, obviously, 10.4 book, these are long-term subs, the 8.4 are on our books. Right.
The 8.4 is, it's a combination of full and part-time.
Okay.
And maybe somebody can increase their hours on a temporary basis. It gets hairy with the unions. I'm going to shut up now.
No, I know what you're saying. Any additional help finding ways to provide that and think outside the box?
So two of those 8.4, two of those bodies, two of those people, teachers are .8s. So if you all say, go ahead and you approve this, then we would most likely make those .8s essentially a 1.0 through the rest of the year, and then reevaluate where we are in terms of need for the upcoming year. And then if it's decided upon that we need this help permanently, we would look to make those people whole and then somebody else. Because if we take .4 off of the 2.0 request, we have 1.6 that we're essentially looking to fill.
Right. Do you get any sort of a heads up, any sort of advance notice from any agency that these will come in such amount of time or on such amount of day? Or do they literally surprise you walking in this door?
Talking with Liz Schroer, the registrar, it's pretty much a surprise. I am not aware of any group that says this is a heads up, these families are coming, not that I'm aware of.
Nothing from a township, nothing from the state, nothing from the federal government?
Not that I'm aware of.
These immigrant students are not coming from any major substantial program that's sending groups of immigrants, is there?
Not that I'm aware of.
So not that I'm aware of either, but as I understand it, people are coming and living with relatives in our community until they can get permanent housing. That's one avenue. The second is local religious organizations are helping people in other places of the world and helping them come here and get host families temporarily until they can. So the example I used earlier about 5 of our EL students moving out over a couple days or a week ago, that was an example. As I understand it, they were with a host family, and then they secured permanent housing outside of our district.
So from what I understand, especially for Ukraine, there's a lot of organizations other than relatives that they were created in order to support, and they bring people here. In some cases, these people don't even know they're coming or when they're coming. So it's very difficult to have advance notice. If something opens up and within the next day or two, you can travel to the United States and try to be accommodating. Of course, family. So, as you said, everybody's scrambled to figure it out. I don't think anybody really knows, or it's not so well designed. From my understanding, talking with some of these people that run programs like that, I wish there was advance notice, but.
And once somebody clicks on the website to begin the registration process or makes a call to begin the registration process, that's when it starts. There's no, and once we get the proper information, then we're looking to put them into schools.
I have a quick question, while we're on that topic, and then I'll give you.
Sorry?
So all that's required is a residential address in our school district. Is that the only, how does this work, or do people come outside of the school district?
No,
Huh?
That would be my question. What documentation are they showing that they're bona fide?
They gotta have a residential.
there's documentation that.
I'm looking at it more about planning, like,
Yeah.
they're living with a host family, they may not be here long.
We have, the state allows multiple items to be used for documentation, whether it's a request for multiple occupancy, which is internal paperwork that we use, whether it's a driver's license, a phone bill, an electric bill, a birth certificate. There's a host of items that could be used for registration purposes.
But I don't understand, you need an address in our school district.
Unless you're homeless, unless it's guardianship, or unless it's multiple occupancy.
So, but guardianship is still an address in the school district. The guardian would have to
The
be in
guardian
school
would have
district.
an
So I'm
address.
saying, ultimately, it has to be tied to a residential address in our sending pattern, or whatever you call it.
For
the enrollment.
guardianship, yes.
Yeah. And how does homeless work? I mean, do they have to have the homeless shelter in the school district?
They don't, no.
They don't even have to have, they just have to have a place to stay.
Right, they don't have a home. They don't have to be in a homeless shelter.
And it's kind of treading on something I wouldn't want to talk publicly, because, it gets into privacy of people again, but just to understand what's going on, I appreciate it, thank you.
So I know
Anybody else?
the IU is providing services in the homeless shelters for children that require that
Right.
kind of service. So and some of them are remote because of the situation of their children, and I don't know how it happens with regular, like schools, not special services.
Yeah, our social workers are highly involved in that.
So the IU is involved heavily in this also?
No, I haven't spoken to
help.
Dr. Hoffman about this from a
They don't
countywide.
provide services, okay, to help?
Special services. I mean, these are not specifically to the ELD, the foreign languages. Homeless, there are a lot of homeless children in Bucks County, and a lot of them are in shelters with their mothers in most cases, and if they require special services, the IU tries to help them out,
I appreciate
either
that.
by going there or by doing remote programs.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Also, just to go back, there are 3 ELD specialists who are .8.
I'm sorry.
And
Thank you.
I know, I just wanted to double check as well. So, and 2 of those are interested in increasing if possible. Again, we haven't talked in depth about that, but 2 are interested in increasing to a 1.0. So just to make sure you had that. And also I wanted to share that, yes, we've seen an increase of students coming from Russia, from Ukraine, but we've actually gotten quite an influx of students coming from all over the world, Central Asia. That's also there's been an increase there. So it's been interesting for sure, but not just that one pocket, but certainly that there's been quite a significant increase since last year with Russia and Ukraine.
Anybody else? It's a pretty interesting topic. Thank you, Ms. Crawford, appreciate
Thank you.
that. Dr. Senka, go ahead.
No, thank you. Appreciate the conversation, and we'll pass the clicker on to Doug Taylor.
Should I take a roll? Is that good? As far as,
Thank you.
I think we're not gonna have a problem.
We're okay on
We have no-
consent?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No choice.
So you've got this slide, and then
Kevin's slides and then your slides.
So just click through these quick.
Well, I can do it for you quicker than that. So
Okay.
You want to go right to your area, or you want to do this?
That's not me.
That's on you?
No.
All right, just give it a minute.
Okay.
There you go.
So I have a couple slides. Won't take a lot of time. I know you have other things going on. Just wanted to go over the facility projects, the capital improvement work that's happening, and the board agenda items. So Feinstone, just wanted to give you a little update on what's happening out there in case you haven't been around. We did successfully move into that next phase of construction. This was really we lost a lot of sleep getting the boiler plant ready for this year. So we were able to successfully get everything fired up, and we moved on to the kitchen addition and the ADA ramp off the gym, which is the picture on the left. The upper left picture is the new chiller that will ultimately be behind a mechanical corral that you won't see when it's finished, but the chiller is functional. The new getting toilet rooms down in the lower level of the existing building with the new addition that went on, and the learning stair that was is fairly complete now. We have a little bit of railing work we want to modify on the top of that that we're working on. And then the 13 classroom addition is on the right there, the larger picture. But kids are actively using that building, and it's been successful. John's been great to work with, and we're doing well with the renovation of the next phase. The level. So these guys never really get the credit that they should. These are the components that are keeping the building up and running. The new pumps for air conditioning and heat. The upper right picture is our new fire protection system that comes into the building with a 30,000 gallon tank. So we now have fire protection, and as we finish each section, that fire suppression system becomes active. So we're progressively firing that up. The middle picture on the right is the new domestic water storage tank. The well fills that, and that's where we have some capacity to serve the students. And the lower right in the distance on the left are the propane tanks. So our boilers are now running off of propane, the hot water heaters, propane, and the kitchen, of course, is propane. And that is the fire pump house on the right that would send the water into the building from that tank if there were a call for the need for the fire suppression system. Richboro Elementary School is moving along. We did have a successful planning commission meeting in September. They actually approved the initial submission as a planning commission without a request to return to the planning commission, which is not often accomplished, so that went really well. We are going back to the zoning hearing board on the 24th, primarily for impervious surface. The amount of hard surface that we have on the site just slightly exceeds what's permitted by the ordinance. The items in bold and gray are really the key items where there's involvement with either the township or the board. We'll go back to the Board of Supervisors in November. We'll be back in front of the board here for approval of the Act 34 advertisement in November as well, and we'll also have that hearing in December. So things are moving along. In January, we'll get this out to bid, so we're doing well with this.
Quick question, do you anticipate any issue with the township with the zoning hearing or anything like that? I think should be smooth. The planning commission kind of went like the same way.
Planning commission it now goes to the Board of Supervisors, but they'll want to know that we went to the zoning first before they grant us our ultimate approval. But I feel pretty confident that we're going to be okay.
Thank you. So.
So the capital improvement plan is being produced. I've been working on that in my spare time. But it's coming along, and it will be ready to, I was hoping to bring them tonight, but I just didn't quite get there. So within the next week or so, I'll be bringing those here to Chancellor so that Christine downstairs can get those distributed to the board. I'm also working on an electronic copy this year that's actually a PDF with tabs so that you can also reference it that way and not just through the book. Try to make something more functional too.
That question just occurred to me right before you stated it. It hasn't been electronic previously, has it?
No, I really haven't had the resources to be able
Right.
to have it and have an
Oh,
electronic
it's
copy.
it's a bear,
Yeah.
but being able to post it on the website is a home run.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
We're not posting it.
We don't usually, but you'll all have the ability
For security
to use it how you wish, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that's important to discuss when I come back, because in November we need to talk about the projects, I'll provide an overview on those. I actually had a meeting with Jessica tonight, who's taking my old place. We had a couple-hour meeting to review things and help her onboard a bit, so she's getting ready. We'll review this 5-year plan with her, so she's on board with what we're looking at. But the projects planned for the summer of '23 are those that don't really require a lot of long lead equipment, because right now, air handling units, any mechanical equipment's about 45 weeks. Generators are a year. Any major equipment is a significant delivery timeline. So the stuff that we're looking at for this next summer is more of coatings or concrete or site work kind of items, and I'll review those with you later. I want to make sure Jessica's on board, because it does ultimately become her plan at the end of the day, so we'll work together on that. The other thing that's going to be important that we talk about, because of the long lead items, the next year, we're talking about HVAC systems for this building, but it might be something worthy of, getting approval for, as we approve the projects for this year, to start documenting and thinking about getting that one out to bid in the spring so we can get the equipment ordered, so that next year when we want to have a successful project here, we'll have the equipment ready to go. Otherwise, we'll be in trouble. So we'll talk about that in more detail when we present that. So the board agenda items, the South Auditorium lighting. So we have, this is a project that has not been good to me or us. I am really challenged by this project, and when I tell you we send it to electricians, it's at least 30 electrical companies that we have relationships with, and there's just not a lot of interest in this project. So the first time around, we had no bidders. This time, we had 4 people at the mandatory pre-bid meeting on site, reviewed it. They were climbing around and very interested at the moment. But when we ultimately received bids, we got one bid from Cedar Electric, who provided a pretty sizable bid. It's well beyond what we would ever expect. We called them, we talked to them about their prices and their costs for materials, and we asked them why. And a lot of it has to do with just the logistics. And this auditorium has excessively high ceilings. So when you put a lift up to get to the fixture itself, there's another 12 feet until you get to the underside of the deck. So you're removing a good bit of the seating, setting it aside just to get your lifts and scaffolding set up. And then a lot of those acoustical panels that you see hanging actually have to be taken down, because you can't access any of the conduits above, any of the power above, without taking those down. So you're interrupting fire protection systems, acoustical clouds. The other thing that we were trying to do so that in the future, when these lamps go out, the crew isn't left trying to figure out how to get to those with lifts and articulating lifts, was putting all the drivers, basically a light fixture. Old light fixtures had ballasts in them. You've heard of those. Well, LEDs have drivers, or LED drivers. We were trying to remotely locate all the LED drivers on the catwalk. So there's a lot of electrical work back and forth so that they're all remotely located. And then when a fixture went bad, you go up the catwalk, take the driver, put the new driver in, and your lamps are basically back in action. That's adding a lot of cost to this as well. So we're going to go back, and we're going to have a conversation with the group at South and talk about, how this wants to look. And it may just need to be a fixture-per-fixture replacement. We just go in, we replace the fixture, and we have to deal with the replacement of those down the road when they go bad, like we are today. we can do some alternate bids and shake the trees again and try to get, more interest in this.
What about abandoning that and retrofitting new lighting? Just
That's kind of what I'm saying with the other option is to kind of retrofit the lighting that's there, leave the power in place, just replace the fixtures with new fixtures. And
that was gutting all the
this is
electric and
basically
conduit?
putting a new system in place of where the old system was with remote drivers and trying to make this more, easily maintained than what it is today. So.
Get to work. Let's get.
Did we understate the budget? I mean, is 2 point whatever a reality?
That number is way too high.
Get a statement for that.
I mean, even if it were a couple $100,000 more, I'd say, okay, that's just out of it.
So in your mind, 750 should have got the job done.
But when you talk to the people that actually provide the stage lighting, they provide the whole package, the lighting, the cost. That was right within the range that the cost that the contractor got. It's all of the house lighting, and it's all of the labor that goes into replacing that house lighting in the way that we were trying to. There's a dimmer rack that's in the back that provides control of the house lighting. So we can look at replacing the dimmer rack, replacing the lights in kind, and kind of rethinking the scope a little bit so that we can bring it back down.
Is the only bidder willing to rework in terms of?
So that's a good question. So I talked to that bidder. It's a nice segue. About value engineering / cost reduction, because this is really more cost reduction than value engineering at this point. But one is changing the type of conduits that are in place. We could save around $100,000. We could go with some alternate equipment manufacturers that would be different than what we talked to the staff about. There'd be some savings there. We could get rid of the floor lighting. The floor lighting is something we wouldn't absolutely have to do, but it does provide egress lighting that isn't there today. We could look at taking that out. And we could change some of the requirements of the lights. So there's, about 300,000. It still doesn't bring us close to where we want to be. So we did look at, what could we do, but we just couldn't get where we wanted to be. And I wanted to come here tonight and make a recommendation to move this forward. And then number 5 is, Joe, kind of what you said. Why can't we just replace them where they are with the lamp, with the new lamp kind of thing? So we want to figure out what that'll be, what the savings will be.
Just remove it and do a whole new thing. It looks beautiful. Architectures can do so many beautiful things with lights today.
You're right. Make it lifelike.
Doug, do you think the market's going to look a lot different next year?
So I hope. Like normally in this capital plan that we prepare, it's a 5% increase on each item. This year it's 10%. We just there's no way we can ignore the increase of the prices in that book being anything less than 10%. That's probably still less than what it absolutely should be, but there's a lot of hope that by 23, prices start to come down with where the economy's headed and things like that. So, but if I said it's 5%, I'd be undercutting all those values.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't be right. It wouldn't represent the real cost of these projects. But there is optimism if that's the case. Now, there's projects being bid that are still coming in higher than anticipated. We saw a project, not ours, but someone else's that came in and they rebid almost every one of the primes to try to get the numbers back into where they needed to be. I'll be able to tell you later, we have the Hatboro Horsham Middle School out to bid, which is a pretty large project, so I'm anxious to see what the costs are and the square foot costs. So that'll be a good tell for us.
Yeah.
So the recommendation is to reject these bids. I had sent that off to Christine for board agenda items, but recommended for rejection. Get back together with the group here, have another meeting with maintenance and the folks at South, and regroup and put this back out and figure out what we can do to get some bidders. And I'm going to call and beg people at this point. So.
Thank you for that.
Hillcrest Elementary School, there's some additional furniture that's needed. Normally, some of this furniture is in the bid, in the architect's bid, but for whatever reason, It was omitted by the architect in this case. It's not harmful in any way. We just don't have the furniture we need. So we're just purchasing it through Pemco in lieu of going through the contractor and paying overhead and profit and things we would on it. So there's furniture, work tables and computer tables for the library, and then added to that was some furniture for the STEAM program, the STEAM classroom, and additional library seating. So this is the company that we historically use for furniture. The numbers are in alignment with the unit pricing that we usually have. So Flintstone, you'll see that we'll provide furniture per phase. So this is the furniture for the next phase that is needed in December for some of the other phases coming up. So we need to get that next phase ordered. These are all, Hillcrest can come out of the project cost. There's still a lot of money in the contingencies to take care of that. And so Flintstone is built into the budget as well. And then there's a change order for Hillcrest, which is the asphalt escalation formula, which we build into all of our specs for the paving fees. Contractors can order all the materials and put those in trailers and have things ready, but the paving, we put an escalation matrix in the spec so that depending on what petroleum costs are when they perform their work, they provide the slips from the plant. There's a formula. They show us in their base bid what the formula is, and we apply the new formula. Whatever the difference is what we pay them for the difference. If it went down, we get a credit. It works both ways. But it's really unreasonable to ask a contractor, like we're bidding Richboro Elementary School, how would they know what asphalt costs are going to be in the fall of 24? Like, it's just impossible to know. So this is just a fair way to take care of the asphalt costs of the project. And that is it.
That's great. Any questions for
Doug,
Dr.?
off the wall question. I have not had the ability to get to Hillcrest yet. You're great. The main hallways, what are the flooring materials?
The flooring materials are quartz tile floors like we used in the classrooms.
Why didn't we do it to us?
Well, there was, when those alternates were reviewed, there was a decision that to not go with the terrazzo at that time.
What's so fine so get it?
So Flintstone is also going to be the quartz tile.
Is that the trend? Is it cost saving?
Would absolutely, it's definitely less cost. The life cycle replacement is certainly more frequent, so, you know, maybe in 15, 20 years, you're replacing those floors with terrazzo, you've been replacing. So you catch up, but in about 15 or 20 years.
You have a big deal with Rolling Hill. Remember, we were on the, trying to figure out $200,000.
Rolling Hills, we put terrazzo everywhere except some connecting corridors.
Right.
Because if we had done everything in terrazzo, it would have compromised the bid. We had another bidder that had an alternate that would have made them the low bidder. And we awarded that after the fact. So the last thing we wanted to do there was change an alternate, award it to the second low, that would have awarded it to the first guy. The other guy who would have, the second guy who would have gotten the job, and it would have just put us at risk. So we didn't want to do that.
So when we bid Richboro, we're going to look at that type of flooring there as well.
We'll absolutely bid terrazzo again. There were a lot of alternates that on this project, at the time, there was a lot of concern for all of the projects and how to allocate funds to try to take care of Soul Limestone, Hillcrest, you know, the combined bid and all those things. So there was a lot of those alternates that weren't considered. But we can absolutely bid for finishes. We like to bid alternates, and we can see if there's interest in it there.
Anybody else?
You answered one of my questions when you were presenting it, that normally furniture is included in the bid. But also normally if it gets removed, isn't that something that we must approve? I mean, the architect can't just say, we're not doing this without notifying the client. So do you have any understanding of maybe what that decision process was, if something needed to give, or you know, what's a little bit of the background?
So the furniture that I'm speaking of is just the library furniture, the computer tables and some of the work tables. And usually All the other loose furniture in the classrooms, historically, we bid separate because we don't want to pay the overhead and profit for that furniture. But the library, because the architect specifies the stacks and all the other furniture, so that the furniture is integrated, we say, hey, spec all of it so that it's all matching in the space.
Right.
For whatever reason, it was just omitted. They didn't even realize it. We didn't realize it until, so that spec section was removed. And I said, hey, where's the tables and the computer tables? And I said, GC missed it, and we looked at the spec, and it just wasn't included. There was no, so there was no one bid it. It was never priced. It was, nothing that was paid for. But the architect just omitted those sections, and it wasn't realized until, it was too late.
Imagine you double checked the fees from the agreement that we had.
Yeah, I mean, we do, the district does well with the fees, the way we prepare the agreements.
That's it. Thank you, Doug. I appreciate it.
See you, Doug.
Matt, you want to go back? I guess
We're good.
I think there's one item left that was on the agenda, but because our interim business manager isn't here, we're going to strike the lab stools and the 4-station modules purchase until further notice.
Thanks.
Other than that, do we go to anybody have a comment before I go to public comment? Any discussion? Any public comment? No. Okay, with that being the case, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Great week.
Thank you.